Welcome back, Baby Club families. Today we're going to talk about baby brain building. By the way, the fancy $1 million word for this is neurogenesis. It just basically means building new brain cells and then giving kids the experiences that kind of also prune and make the things that are the most important and the most helpful for them stand out. So that sounds fancy. And there are some things that we do, lots of things we do that build brain cells. There are also some things that can make it harder for kids to build brain cells. And some of that is outside things like trauma or a lot of stress. So things like living in poverty or having neglect as an early experience, or living with addiction in a household where that's an issue, can all cause stress that can make brain building more difficult. So in fact, kids that have that up until about age 3, their brains are about 35% smaller than we would expect. This is the good news. We can buffer that stress. We can make up for it. Kids are resilient. We can help them get past some of those early struggles. And when I say this, I'm not just saying this from being Miss Emily, Baby Club Miss Emily, and a school psychologist, which is what I do in my day job in early intervention, which I love and I care about and I'm passionate about. But I'm also saying it as a mom. My 3 children were each adopted from an orphanage setting when they were 8 to 11 months old, each separately, of course. And I had to work really, really, really hard with talk, sing, read, play, and neurogenesis to help them. I believe in this. I did this stuff that we're talking about in these examples, and it really has paid off. My kids are all smart. They all have excellent vocabularies. My older 2 are really, really good writers, and my daughter is graduating from college early from a good college and doing really well. She's my oldest, and my youngest is 11 right now. So I get that it's hard sometimes. I get that it's tiring. I also know how much it pays off. So keep with it. Some of the things you can do to buffer stress through this whole talk, sing, read, play. There was a study in 2017. It was done by Higgins, and they kind of came up with what they called the power tools, like the most important things you could do. And I'm just going to tell them to you. One is physical play. So we already talked about how back and forth play interactions and really being present with your child is important. Now, keeping it physical, it kind of makes me laugh because anybody that's been with a toddler any amount of time knows that there's almost no way you can't keep play physical because they're on the move. So they like to be active, not passive. The second one is meaningful new learning in context. So that's a fancy way of saying what we just said the last video. You learn throughout your day. You make it meaningful. We're not talking about flashcards over here. We're talking about the banana on our tray. We're talking about the errands we do when we go to the laundromat, when we go to the library, when we read our books, all things that matter to a little kid's life. The third one is giving your child an enriched environment. What does that look like? My pediatrician had a great saying. He used to say, when you give your child a new experience, it's like loading a new CD into their brain. And I like that because you could go out and buy the absolutely most fanciest computer. You could spend the most money on it. But if you don't load programs on it, your computer's not going to be able to work. It's kind of like the brain. The more experiences we give our kids, the more connections they're going to make, the more the brain is going to build. It's kind of like a spider web. Each new experience is like a thread of the web. Then when we repeat things, that thread gets stronger and stronger, and then they all connect. So your child might not remember something that you did with them when they were 6 months or 5 months or 8 months, but that experience of going to the zoo, of going to the pet store, of walking around the block and talking about the flowers you see, that stays with them in their brain. And the next time they go to the zoo or see the flowers, it builds on that. So what you're doing when they're really young is important. The fourth thing we can do is manage stress. This is super hard for families because you're a caregiver and you baby comes first, but it's the oxygen mask. I've learned this more as my kids got older. If I had to do it over again, I'd figure it out sooner. Take care of yourself first. Your baby needs you to take care of yourself. How can you do that? One way is through social support. So again, call 211. So many moms that come to Baby Club are struggling with postpartum depression. Don't struggle alone if that's a concern you have. Call 211. They can hook you up with resources. It's common. It will pass, but you might need help in the moment. And then the last thing is good nutrition for us and for the baby. So we do whole classes on what good nutrition is. You can talk to WIC, you can talk to your pediatrician, but whole grains, fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, good fat for babies' brains, not McDonald's fat, but good avocados and salmon and things like that. Those all help build the brain too. All of that will help us with neurogenesis, building the brain cells, and buffer the effects of stress, which sometimes can't be avoided and are a part of lots of our lives. But we can help our kids be resilient.